What happens to the mind of a Palestinian child is something Americans are not used to when they're growing up, because you're interested in the education of your children as usual. At 6 years old, I remember my first song going to the kindergarten. Arabs are beloved and Jews our dogs. العرب احبابنا واليهود كلابنا. Every single day going to school. I went home and asked my father who was the Jews, mean al-Yahud. And all what I was told is that these were the descendants of monkeys. Even when Israel came back, I remember going to the zoo in Jerusalem, watching the smoking gorilla. Anybody familiar with the smoking gorilla? Anybody who used to smoke used to throw the cigarette to the gorilla, and the gorilla would smoke it. The gorilla was trained to smoke. And I was told that that was a descendant of the Jews as a child. Sort of like the evolution. Didn't know what Jews were, never talked to a Jew, never communicated to a Jew. The 6 Days War erupted. I remember the Jordanians that came before the 6 Days War. They were all huffed and puffed, parading after Jamal Abdel Nasser, their hero. All the Arab armies declaring war against Israel. We're going to throw Israel into the sea. We're going to kill every Jew. We chanted in school, paraded. King Hussein came to Jordan, I remember. The Jordanian flag looked exactly like the Palestinian flag afterwards, which we created. We considered ourselves Jordanians. There was no such thing as Palestine. I don't remember the word Palestine was ever taught in school, even though Yasser Arafat's charter did not include Judea and Samaria in his charter until after the 6 Days War. And I remember the 6 Days War like it was yesterday. I would never forget it. We declared war against Israel. Israel preempted. And 6 days and 6 nights we hid in our bathroom with our neighbors who were left. Very few people were left in our neighborhood because the whole neighborhood ran away, crossed the Jordan River before a bullet was fired. The Jordanian media, the Egyptian media, the Syrian media urged all the population to leave, go to Jordan. They have painted this Jewish monster that's going to come, this Jewish evil military that the Arabs were going to destroy. So to go to shelter, go to Jordan. Everybody ran away. We sat in our home, 6 days and 6 nights, sort of like Joshua's battle on the walls of Jericho, 6 days and 6 nights. On the 7th day, the trumpets were blown and Israel was created. And in the same fashion, those 6 days and 6 nights, the Jordanians gave very little resistance. We had 2 tanks in the back of our house which never fired a shell because the Jordanian soldiers ran away. Jordanian soldiers took their uniforms off and ran away. Tried to climb rooftops to get women's clothing because they used to hang their clothing on the roof. Dressed up like women, just to hide from the infamous Israeli warrior. Then the infamous Israeli warrior came in to Jericho. Hours before, my father was listening to the news media, and they were saying, we have reached Jerusalem, the Arab news media. We have cleansed Jerusalem of the Jews. We opened the doors. There was these tanks rolling by with the Star of Mogen David on them. And I told my father that this is not the flag we saluted when King Hussein paraded in Jericho. What happened? My father was crushed. But my mother was rejoicing. And I remember in high school, we learned the Islamic eschatology regarding the Jewish people, that the day of judgment shall not come to pass until the tribes of Islam defeat the tribes of Israel. And they asked the Prophet Muhammad, where will this be? And he said, in Jerusalem and in the surrounding nations. And let me quote it in Arabic. So if anybody here who speaks Arabic thinks I'm making things up, or I'm a forgery, so he knows that I understand and learned most of the Quran and memorized it by heart, and memorized the hadith, and memorized all the things I've learned that I picked up like a sponge when I was a child. لا تقوم الساعة حتى تغلب طائفة من المسلمين طائفة من اليهود قيل أين يا رسول الله قال في بيت المقدس وأكناف بيت المقدس. And the story goes on that the tree of the Jews, which is called the tree of Al-Ghardaq, will cry out, and the stones will cry out, there is a Jew hiding behind me. Come, O Muslim, come, O slave of Allah, come and kill him till not one Jew is left. And I learned in school the treatment of dhimmi, the dhimmitude status for Christians and Jews. The Umar Declaration that stated that a Jew must wear a yellow patch. The Nazi Germany patch was created way before Nazi Germany ever existed. Even Al-Khalifa al-Mutawakkil ordered all Jews to wear yellow patches. The so-called golden age of Islam that you learn of ain't so golden if you dig deep into the history. The Umar Declaration that we learned proudly. To you, this is bothersome. To us, this is pride. That a Jew must not ride a horse. He must ride a donkey. That a Jew must not build his grave above a Muslim grave. That the Jew cannot be a judge on a Muslim court, owner of a Muslim slave, must not walk the normal road, but must take the alleyways, must humble his head in front of a Muslim, must pay jizya, protection money, every year. And when he pays his due, he gets slapped on the neck to get another collar on his neck made out of lead. In it, the amount of payment for the next year. Why? Because the Quran stated, حَتَّى يَدْفَعُ الْجِزْيَةَ عَنْ يَدٍ وَهُمْ صَاغِرُونَ. So they pay the jizya, tax appointed to them, by an upper hand. May they be belittled and humiliated. We have learned over there in school, day in and day out, Israel is an occupation. The Jews have no history in that land, that we are the original Philistines, the original Canaanites. You see, the similarities between Nazi Germany and what we learn is very, very little. The difference is that what's happening today is much more tremendous. Because it is not only one country like Germany, but it is all over the Arab Muslim world. In all these countries, this is what they are being raised. Even though we should have thought for ourselves and used our heads to think twice if we considered ourselves Palestinians, being Arabs, being Semites. How in the world we connect ourselves with the Philistines and the Canaanites is beyond me now. Because the Philistines and the Canaanites don't exist anymore. Even though the PLO charter says that Palestine must be an Arab, some mythical idea, an Arab Palestinian, how could this be when a Palestinian, a Philistine, is not even an Arab? The same myths, similar myths to what they teach in Nazi Germany, is being taught throughout the Middle East, in their media, in all the foundations, whether it's religious or secular. Americans do not understand what makes a young terrorist is the same hatred that Nazi Germany teaches is being taught today. Even going to the mosque and listening to Ikrimah Sabri, the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, the predecessor of Hajj Amin al-Husseini. Listening to them will give you the chills. Hajj Amin al-Husseini was a regular visitor to our house. He would visit my grandfather. My grandfather would make feasts for this man. Hajj Amin al-Husseini with Abdul Qadir al-Husseini would visit our village and our family. I never knew that Hajj Amin al-Husseini conspired with Adolf Hitler on the eve of the final solution. I never knew that Hajj Amin al-Husseini urged the Prime Minister of Foreign Affairs of Hungary to stop the immigration of Jews to the land of Israel. And he was successful. And 500,000 Jews went to the ovens. No thanks to Hajj Amin al-Husseini, the killer of Jews, the friend of Adolf Hitler. And I go to the mosque of Umar, to your holy place, O Jews, and stand and stone you when you're at the Wailing Wall, while I listen to sermons from Ikrimah Sabri, who says even your Wailing Wall is called Al-Buraq Wall. It belongs to Muslims, and the Jews have no place in it. There was never a Solomon's temple. There was never a Jewish temple. You see, myths and fabrications that we were taught as children is the same myths and fabrications similar to what goes on in Nazi Germany. And you tell me it's an issue of education. Germany and Nazi Germany existed in the 20th century with a society that was very, very educated. Hitler was a very educated man. And it's these educated men that create the myths for the normal populations that sucks it up and believes in it and decides to die so they can make money, so they can gain wealth. There's something in common between all these people. Two things: the control over women and money and power. Those are the things that is in common with all these societies that we grew up with. 55 Muslim nations, that not one of them has the freedom of religion for people to choose what they want to believe in. My naive mother had no clue what she was getting herself into. Just like the American society has no clue what they see day in and day out that comes off CNN and the media. They do not understand it. They need to talk to my mother, who all her life and her story was to rescue her children, to come out of this country. But instead, even her own children went against her, because what they learned in school was the hatred of Americans. The American imperialist finally, my education system, my religious education in high school and as I was growing up culminated. And after many rioting, throwing stones at you, fighting with your soldiers, I ended up in prison, in the Muscovite prison in Jerusalem, where I was recruited by a well-known bomb maker named Mahmoud al-Mughrabi. Mahmoud al-Mughrabi, the relative of Dalal al-Mughrabi, who killed 36 Jews in a bus, not because they're Zionists, just simply because they're Jews. And you hear all this stuff about the Arabs don't hate Jews, they simply hate Zionism. If they simply hate Zionism, why are they blowing up civilians? Ended up in prison, got recruited, of course wanted to carry out my first mission to kill my first Jews. My target was Bank Leumi Israel in Bethelehem. The explosive charges were put in a bread, in a loaf of Jewish bread, and I was smuggled by the Waqf, the holy Muslim people on the Temple Mount, the lovers of truth and justice. I carried explosives on your holy Temple Mount, walking the walls of Jerusalem, going down a staircase, going to the bus stop in Jerusalem, going to Bethlehem to blow up a bank. When I got to the bank, I saw Arab children running around. So I decided to toss it on the roof of the bank, where it exploded 5 minutes later. I defied my orders. Instead of putting it at 6 o'clock, I put it 5 to 6. The explosive charge was supposed to go on me, so I can die as a suicide bomber. I was supposed to go as a fida'i, as a sacrifice. Just a dumb kid, didn't know what he was doing, and doesn't know any better, who never had the opportunity to hear the other side. Why was I doing this? Because in the school they taught us, وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ الَّذِينَ قُتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَمْوَاتٌ بَلْ أَحْيَاءٌ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ يُرْزَقُونَ. Do not believe that the ones who die for the cause of Allah are dead, but are living with Allah, receiving blessings. And what kind of blessings? 72 virgins. And let me make a correction to this. It is not 72 virgins. It is 72 rooms with 72 sheets, and on each sheet there is 72 virgins. Hallowed pearls with virgins. And when you consummate your marriage with them, they turn back to be virgins again. As a young teenager, being secluded from girls, not being mixed up in the school, you can see how that affects. And even in high school, I remember my teacher's name, Sheikh Naim Ayyad, and also Sheikh Zakaria, who has had 2 wives. What did Sheikh Naim Ayyad teach us? That when we defeat the Jews, we will take their women as concubines. And I asked Mr. Naim Ayyad, what do you mean by concubines? Is that like wives? Slaves? He says, no, not like wives, because those do not inherit. Their children from a concubine does not inherit. You can call them as slaves. Well, is it permissible to have sex with your slaves? Of course you can have sex with a concubine. And I said, after we kill their husband and their brothers in the family? He says, absolutely. Because in accordance to the story of Muhammad, who killed Rabbi Qanina, who killed the tribes of Banu Qurayda, Banu Nadir, and Banu Qaynuqa', which we proudly studied in history, took Rabbi Qanina's wife as a concubine and consummated his right the same night as he went back to the camp, after killing her father and after killing her brother. This is what we studied. You can tell me about peaceful Islam. You can lecture me about peaceful Islam. You can bring a bunch of Muslim students who are going to refute what I'm saying to you. But I can only tell you what I have learned in school. That's all I can tell you. This is what I learned. And I want my Muslim friends to win this argument, to show that Islam is peaceful, not just talk and say that Islam is peaceful. Because as I see it today, if you take 100 terror acts, are they done by Buddhists, Christians, Shinto, or Muslims between the ages of 20 and 40? Even as a child, I remember the Hashuwa, your Holocaust footage that you showed in the Israeli TV as a memorial for the Holocaust. I remember watching the footage and wondering, how did they bring these scrawny people to do those acts as they fell in the graves? Because we were taught that the Holocaust was a fabrication. The Jews have made it up to create the state of Israel. Can you imagine eating popcorn and laughing because you think this is a comedy film they're showing? You see the bodies falling in the hole, and you're amazed how in the world they were able to orchestrate such film. Yet I can tell you the truth, that after the deniers will see this footage that we made here, they will deny that we're telling the truth. You see, to me, it is not an issue of logic or truth, but it's an issue of a spiritual condition. A spiritual condition, a religious condition that is controlled by the mosque and by the media. Can you imagine when you wake up in the morning and you go to school and you see every single part of every single wall with graffiti calling the death to the Jews, the death to the Zionist enemy, opening the newspapers saying the Jews are Shylocks, the Jews are converts of monkeys and pigs, the Jews own the media, the Jews run the Congress, The Jew even sells Cadbury chocolate to the Palestinians, tainted with mad cow disease. The Jews taint the water with infertility drugs so Palestinians cannot produce. The Jew has type AB blood, which doesn't give, and the Palestinians has type O blood, which gives to everybody. We are generous and they're stingy. But did I ever stop to think logically of what I witnessed and what I've seen? A couple occasions when I went to school in Bethelehem, a man cuts his daughter's head off because she allegedly had an affair with somebody. The Israelis come, arrest this man, take him to jail, and the entire Al-Aida camp in Bethlehem goes and bails him out. They collect a fund for him. That's the kind of society I lived. I would kill my sister in a twitch if I felt that she had an affair or had a boyfriend or thought about marrying a Christian or a Jew. I remember one time a construction man, Jewish construction man, who was taking his load through Bethlehem, right next to Rachel's tomb. He accidentally hit a girl, an Arab girl who was going to school. He stops his truck and he tries to call for help. We saw the situation. We instantly attacked him and stoned him, broke the windshield. Hundreds of us. He was bleeding profusely from his head. And he was still calling for help for that girl. He turned his truck. He ran away finally. We went back to school. We started a student council to decide what should we do about the situation. And a blind high school student, blind from birth, his eyes were white, he was so blind, rose his cane and made some frenzy Quranic verses and declared by Allah, this Jew hit this girl on purpose. Let's not forget the Intifada started on a similar accident where a Jewish jeep accidentally killed a Palestinian. And you had what's the so-called Intifada happened as a result. I'm sure you all are thinking there's a problem with the situation here. It took me 20 years, ladies and gentlemen, to think about the situation. It's a simple question. The man was blind. How could a blind man convince the entire school to go on a rampage and to start an almost intifada? Why were we so blind with a blind man? Why would we follow somebody who's blind in sight and sight is beyond me? Again, it's a religious upbringing. Then I went a little further. Not enough stoning, bombing, attempting to kill, starting a riot in my village. The high Israeli official comes and with a loudspeaker tries to calm the demonstrators. We attack him, grab him, stone him, club him. And remember my friend, Jamal Hannouna, had a club with a nail at the end of it. And he was plunging the nail with a club on his head. He was bleeding like a fountain. We were in an attempt to do a lynching, just like the lynching that happened in Ramallah. For some of you who do not know the lynching that happened in Ramallah, where the two reservists got lost on the streets of Ramallah and got caught by the Palestinian Force 17, taken to prison, with the entire society in Ramallah going to the prison, taking these guys out, killing them. And not only killing them, it wasn't satisfactory, but rip their guts out, take their lungs and their kidneys, take their intestines, take their hearts, take their eyes, and put it on a platter and serve it to the population of Ramallah. A picture is worth 1,000 words, my friends. Because I was just about to do the same thing to that Jewish soldier if he had not run away. And I thank God till today that I don't have Jewish blood on my hands. Look at the footage with the Palestinians in a frenzy. Allahu Akbar. Allah is great. With a frenzy. In an ecstasy. Parading the parts in the city. Almost the entire population of Ramallah was there. Yet the media accused the Jews every time a Palestinian is killed when the Israelis try to kill terrorists. My cousin Ra'id Abu Awadallah, a 16-year-old kid on his way to destroy and kill Jews in Ben Yehuda Street, got shot by the Israelis. Of course he was declared as a martyr, and the Jews supposedly murdered him. He was trained the same way. And my aunt, after he died, had to pass out candy and have a wedding celebration for the death of her son, who the Jews were accused of murdering. Of course, the United Nations writes these stories, and his story is that the Jews killed him so they can take his body parts and sell them in the black market. And I asked my family, what is their evidence for this? And they said that the nurses walked out with bloody gloves. Absurdities and myths are being taught in our society. In America, I came to America after this prison and after all these things. My parents sent me to America, to the United States, supposedly so I can get a higher education. Did I get a higher education? No. Instead, I joined the other Palestinians in Loop College. I became the president of the Palestinian Student Association in Loop College. Did we graduate from college? No. How many of us graduated from college? 2 out of 100. Why? Because all of us were activists in collecting funds for the PLO. I remember working as an interpreter. And what did I interpret? When I collect funds for the PLO, I invite Americans like you to come so they can support our cause. The document would say on the wall, in Arabic would say, Land Day, please come. We will collect funds for the PLO. We will help the martyrs and the victims, and all kinds of things. The English translation would say, come, we will have a party. You will be fed baklava and lamb. Middle Eastern cultural party. You see, lying in our culture is a normal thing. To lie in Islam during jihad is absolutely okay. Going on demonstrations in Chicago, what did we chant? Who owns the media? And the crowd will say, Israel. Who runs the Congress? The crowd screams out, Israel. And I wonder today, if indeed Israel owns the media, why is CNN still running? Why is Christiana Amanpour still working? What the Jews should do today is follow this conspiracy and really and seriously think about buying the media. You see, we hated you way before the so-called occupation. We hated you when the Hebron massacre happened. No thanks to Hajj Amin al-Husseini, who went to Libya, Iraq, Morocco, Germany, all over the world, broadcasting from the news media and the radio to kill every Jew wherever you find them. Everybody knows about the Deir Yassin massacre, but very little known about the massacre of Havron. What happened in the massacre of Havron? The massacre of Hebron. The documents tell us the truth. When the Arab mobs walked in, when all the Jewish community hid in a rabbi's house, the men's private parts got cut off. She can tell you more stories what happened in Lebanon to the Christians, where the men cutting their private parts. What did they find out when they walked into that house of that rabbi? Breasts cut off, guts cut off, eyes cut off, noses and ears, pieces, a slaughterhouse. Let me tell you about the facts of what happens in the Muslim society, the fundamentalist Muslim society that is so peaceful in Sudan. What happened to 1 million Christians who got butchered in Sudan that nobody talks about? We should only talk about Deir Yassin. Go to Google search engine and put Deir Yassin and see how many hits you get. But search Damour massacre, you find 0 hits. Ain al-Hilwa massacre, nothing. Where is all these other massacres? Why do we only hear about their so-called massacre? When Birzeit University did a study, clearly showed there was no massacre. When some of the bodies that were found there was Bosnian SS troops. Yes, Bosnian SS troops in Deir Yassin. The recruits of Hajj Amin al-Husseini who killed Jews way before the occupation. Way before the occupation, they persecuted Jews. Way before the occupation, they forced Jews to leave. Way before the occupation, they pogromed Jews in the Middle East. Yet Ikrimah Sabri says that the Muslims are innocent from the Holocaust. Are they so innocent? The Nazi Germany military regime had 8 divisions. Al-Khanzar division, the Bosnian SS division, was Muslim fundamentalist division, carrying out the death of hundreds of thousands of Christians and thousands of Jews. All over in Eastern Europe. All over so-called Palestine. We have been taught so much lies today. Even the Pope who comes to the Haisha camp says that the shepherds of Bethelehem were your ancestors to the Palestinians. The lies are even fed by the Christian clergy. I went to 3rd grade and 4th grade to a Christian school. And what did I learn in the Christian school? Jesus was a Palestinian revolutionist. I learned the theology of liberation. Liberation theology, which is a communistic theology. Taking the Bible and gutting it out from everything Jewish. And making the theology fit Yasser Arafat's agenda. We worshipped Yasser Arafat. I remember the demonstration saying, "Barruh biddam nafdika ya Arafat." With blood, with soul, we give to Arafat. I can't imagine today, how could I have given my blood and my soul to such a man? And why did we come to that land? Because the Jews built settlements and made industry and farms and gave jobs to the Arabs, to all these people that were coming there. You see, my father was saved by a Jewish doctor because the Arab doctors couldn't figure out what's wrong with him. Until today, I ask my Arab father, I ask him, why don't you pray for the Jewish doctor who saved your life? And his answer, simply put, is that I cannot pray for my enemy. But in a Jewish book, I learned that I must pray for my enemy and love my enemy, exactly as what she was saying. That's why the Jew knows love more than anybody else. That's why it's the Jew who will rescue a Muslim, a Lebanese, regardless to their religion, regardless to their background, in the hospitals. It was a Jew who saved my cousin, Ibrahim Awadallah, who drowned in the Mediterranean Sea. When 2 other Muslims started to rescue him, they both drowned and died. A Jew comes by, and he takes empty gallons from the trunk of his car, swims towards him and rescues his life. But when I went to congratulate him for his life being rescued, and I mentioned to him that it was a Jew who rescued your life, I was instantly yanked out of the room and told and scourged, don't you ever mention that a Jew rescued his life. He hates the thought of a Jew rescuing his life. The question is, why do you still do it? Why do you still rescue us even though we want to murder you? Why do you hide your children while we put our children in the front to die so we can make propaganda? Why do we sell our children to the god Molech in terrorism? Why do we sacrifice our children for such a religion that teaches hatred? Why do we do it? Why is there so much evil in today's world? They keep telling us all religions are the same. God is the same for everybody, right? Allah is the same as God and all these things. And I wonder at times, if God doesn't have love, He can't be God. God must love everybody. Yet we learn that our Allah have taught us to hate the Jew and the Christian alike. And that's why in our demonstrations we walk every day, Saturday people first and Sunday people next. That's why September 11 happened. And that's why the world can never figure out what happened till today. Fawz al-Qawiqji, who we sang in our wedding songs. And some of you don't know who Fawz al-Qawiqji was. He was an associate of Hajj Amin al-Husseini. He's from Lebanon, a Muslim from Lebanon. Where was he trained at? He was trained in Nazi Germany. He was the head of the Arab coalition against Israel to fight Israel. Him and Hajj Amin al-Husseini and Abdul Qadir al-Husseini, what were they preaching? Were they preaching for a secular Palestinian state? No. They simply wanted to annihilate every single Jew, not only in Israel, but in all the Middle East. That was the whole agenda between Hitler and the Islamists. Hitler was stopped, but the Islamist continues. And that's why you see the snoo beast, the snoo monster rising its head again. Because he was never destroyed, he was never finished. He rises his head from Saudi Arabia to build madrasas all over Pakistan and Afghanistan and Syria and Libya and even in the United States of America. Right here in your midst they exist. Right here in your midst, the American Council, the Islamic American Council, clearly declares that we stand with Al-Qaeda, we stand with Hamas. And then they preach peace on the other side of their mouth. That's why America must wake up and understand what really is the story behind the Arab-Israeli wars. It is not a story of a land, and it is not a story of Palestinians who got kicked out. Because we kicked out 800,000 Jews who don't even complain today, don't even say anything today about their Holocaust. It is not an issue of occupation, but it is the truth regarding the occupation of the minds of Palestinian children, the minds of Muslim children throughout the Muslim world. It is the truth regarding that hatred-filled education and religious system. That is the real occupation, ladies and gentlemen. That is what we are up against. And that is the war that we have to fight. That's why we have to go to the universities. That's why we have to go to the media. That's why we have to go to the newspapers. And that's why we have to be like warriors. And you might tell me you're simply a simple drop of rain and you can't do nothing. The media is too big for you. Let me tell you something. Raindrops creates other raindrops to make a stream and a flow of a river that cannot be stopped. Now finally I learned the meaning of Zionism, the rights of the Jewish people to go back to their land and defend their existence. And I'm proud to tell you today, if this is what the world curses, if Zionism is the evil of this world, I pray every day to Hashem that I be plagued with it and I never recover.